Hello, my loves. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Dustina. This is Spiritually Boujee Astrology, and we're going to take a look at the astrological transits of October 6th to October 12th. One quick little announcement on my personal Facebook page, so not the Spiritually Boujee Astrology page, but my personal page. I did post a calendar of events for all the local events that I am doing for the month of October. At this time, there's an asterisk there. Um, this weekend we have Day of Sage at Energestic. There is going to be quite a few Witchy Wednesdays and Tarot Tuesdays for spooky season. And I feel like there's going to be one more event that it just hasn't popped up yet. I've had multiple people offer me something one particular weekend, and the energy goes, nope, don't do that. So I listen to my intuition. I have not committed to something one extra weekend this month, but I feel like it's going to come through. And as soon as that does come through, if it is in fact an event, I will be announcing some additional event later this month. So good stuff on that. Moving along, let's get straight into the week. Now, if you listen to last week's episode, I said everything is a buildup, everything that's going to come through. There was going to be certain kinds of news and information that's meant to be helpful, but for some people, it was going to kind of create an upset. And I felt like maybe part of the upset was the timing of it. It's like you got direction, but you didn't get to take the action, and you had to sit and stew on things for a while. Some people, the direction, the information, the news, it's not that you need to sit and stew. It's just more along the lines of like, it was just not right now. And that's why I was kind of more playful in the title with the bad news bears. I'm like, we're not all going to get our way, but that doesn't take away from the fact that we're not in alignment with where we're meant to be, because many of us are. Now, as we go into the very start of this week, we're going straight into that full moon in Aries that we were building up to all of last week. And I felt like everyone could feel that buildup. Now, for some people, that buildup is going to lead to some type of reaction. Now, that reaction really depends on your own personal behavior and how you decide to react to things. A full moon in Aries can be very volatile. It can be very infuriating. It can be very frustrating because it's a peak of energy in this reactive Mars ruled sign. However, the condition of Mars is not in a place of being reactive. Remember, babies, Mars is going over an area of the sky where he had a rebirth 2 years ago. And he's really pushing forth a level up to the intentions that we set back in November of 2023, most exact in November. Some people started setting intentions in October. That's good for you. November was the heightened, most exact point. Retracing areas of the sky where he's already done things, where he's already been a part of things, where he's already had changes a long time ago. And when I think back to that time frame, I also compare that to the full moon that's coming up. Because at the time that I'm recording this, it's Friday morning and the moon is still in Aquarius, so we're not near this yet. But when I think back to before and where it's taking us now, whenever Mars went through that rebirth, we had the North Node in Aries, literally in the area of the sky where the full moon is going to be. And for us to reach certain levels of desires and the path that we wanted to connect to and we wanted to push forward, we've needed the level of change of the last 2 years to put something into place. And in a lot of ways, as we start this week, I feel like the reaction also from the full moon, if it's not going that negative route, and I don't want to get too caught up in the negative route, it's more uplifting. It's bringing hidden things to the surface. It's confirming certain desires. It's confirming a lot of long-term plans of action, and also allowing more of an activation to step forward. Now, if you go back to the month ahead forecast, I talk about how activating this month is based off of the numerology, based off of some of the transits that are going to be starting this month, and then being the first in the series of 3 or 5, because one of them is 5. We're not in it yet. but we're still in a period of like activations of letting us know that path, the direction where we're going to put our focus. And I still feel like there can be indifference to this week, but I also feel like some of the indifference is very, very necessary, because the thing is, we're not in a place where our ego is going to get a lot of what it wants. It needs to be a little bit more practical. And the thing about being practical is we all have different definitions of what that means. Your version of practical is not my version of practical. The way that you psychoanalyze something is not the same way that I do. It's not the same way that Joe does it, or Sally, or whoever else we want to make up names for. Because I just make up names. I promise you, I do not have a Joe or a Sally in my life. We see certain things and we can start to analyze them. Now, the thing about Mars being in Scorpio as we go into this full moon is there's so much of what's been going on below the surface that needs to come out. And this feels like the week that really brings a lot of that to the surface. It brings a lot of things to the forefront, and it makes us start to do this next little bit of transitioning our minds, the framework, the direction, and the path. I feel like there's more, I don't want to say forward, exponentially forward shifts, but I do feel like there's directional shifts, a bit more narrowing of the scope. Instead of trying to do the entire playground, we're going to hone in on the areas where we're most likely to have risk. We're going to watch the kids on the monkey bars. We're going to watch them on the jungle gym. Can the kids out there on the playground still running, still get hurt? Absolutely. But we're going to hone in on our risk factors. Now, risk is a very loose term. For some people, risk is going to be exactly that. We're going to take a risk. We're going to feel compelled, activated to react and take a risk. For other people, there's going to be these deep-seated desires that find their way to the surface, and we will be acting upon them. Now, that can be very loose itself, because for some people, that could be finally telling that person how you feel about them and seeing if they're going to match your energy. While on the other side, that could be a whole other situation of somebody feeling entitled to be able to behave a certain way and acting out in a way that shouldn't happen because it could potentially be violent. I don't like that, but I'm being realistic. It is possible. Violence is possible whenever it comes to a full moon in Aries. And this is, again, how we start the week. We started at a peak. We started at a high point, high energy vibration. For some people, it's going to be very excitable. It's going to feel fun. It's going to feel great. And that activation is like, I feel like I can finally do something. And in a lot of ways, that is true. But the human effect is not everybody is in such a mental energy of being able to just hop out and take a risk. And some people are going to do something very underhanded. They're going to do something that is not necessarily safe for everyone. They're going to do things to, again, kind of satisfy their ego versus, again, what's fair for everyone. And I feel like there's going to be a bit of ego check, but just not in the full moon. I feel like it comes after the full moon as the week dies down from said full moon. Okay. Let's get into it. Let's get into the week. Let's get into Monday, October 6th. We are starting this right after midnight, because if you did listen to last week's episode, one of the things that I was talking about was that as soon as the moon goes into Aries, it's going to start this conjunction to Neptune. The moon went into Aries right before midnight. It was like 11:48, I think it was. I didn't actually look at that. I'm sorry. But right before midnight. In that hour, this midnight hour, the moon is going to make this conjunction to Neptune. So for some people, the human effect of whatever this is can still be a part of Sunday evening. For other people, it is in the overnight hours. We're just going to look at whatever it's the most exact, of course, to talk about the potential of this. The moon hitting the conjunction to Neptune, and this is the last conjunction to Neptune before Neptune retrogrades back into Pisces. Remember, later this month, around that hot point energy, the week of October 20th, we are going to have Neptune go back into its prior sign. So this is the last conjunction in Aries until next spring. And there can be something that is very shocking, very, very confusing, that is emotionally dysregulating. There's a specific reason why I'm saying that. That hits us, that kind of hits us into a shock point and makes us feel hesitant about something, or makes another person feel hesitant about us. Some of the confusion, some of the way people's acting, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't feel right. Now, there can also be things about the past coming back around and you having one belief of something. And then for some reason, what you thought was true, suddenly you realize isn't. Suddenly you have discovered it isn't. There's something about an emotion or a belief or a thought process that's meant to come to the surface, considering the last few days the moon was in Neptune sign. It was actually in Pisces. And then it hits this conjunction to Neptune right as it's going into Aries. And as soon as the moon is in Aries, we are then in full moon vibration, even though we're not in the full moon yet. This is going to hit a lot of people's minds, their psyche, in a very odd way. The other way that this can come through is there can suddenly be a reaction to something. Now I'm thinking the physical reaction, something tied to the body. There can be a reaction to something that doesn't make sense. We don't know what's going on. We're super confused. Why am I feeling this way? What's been happening? What do I need to let go of? Why am I so itchy? Like there can be a reaction to something as well when the moon hits that conjunction to Neptune. Lies, fraud, deception, confusion, not necessarily seeing everything clearly, feeling some kind of emotional trigger that makes us pull back from somebody, or there can be that physical reaction of something in the body. And if in the overnight hours and we're trying to sleep, our minds can be spinning, not necessarily able to get our minds clear at this moment, because we're also in these final degrees of Mercury in Libra. So we could be very confused about either something that we need to release or let go of or be done with, or adding more fuel to the fire. We can be very confused or kind of in a surreal state. This is going to be a little bit more positive, a surreal state of something that is about to begin potentially later in the day on Monday, or somewhere just in the first start of the week of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Considering that this, again, is happening at such a late hour, for a lot of people, this is kind of a carryover from Sunday night. So just be prepared for that. Okay. The moon's conjunction to Uranus also includes this this conjunction to Neptune also includes this sextile to Uranus. Now, this is going to be felt a little bit afterwards. So between 12:30 and 1:30 a.m., here's the moon 1 degree, 2 minutes. Here's the Uranus 1 degrees, 5. And in addition to this, while we're going through this sextile from Uranus, we also have this sextile from Pluto. So Pluto to the moon, moon to Uranus. Of course, Pluto and Uranus have kind of been in a trine, even though it's not been exact this year, most of the last month. So they're still impacting each other in this vibration. We can have something in those midnight hours that comes through unexpectedly that, talks about an old fear, an old wound, an old anxiety coming back up to the surface. That's always a possibility. But I feel like there is something about Sunday evening going into Monday that we're very, very busy with something, or we are reacting to something, or we're getting hit with something that we did not anticipate. And again, very confused and blindsided based off of the most dominant of the three aspects that we're talking about is still that moon Neptune conjunction, because they are right on top of each other. Let's keep it going. As we get into the morning time at 11:41 a.m. Central Standard Time, that is when Mercury is going to enter Scorpio. For a lot of people, this is an arrival. Some kind of news, some type of information, some kind of documentation, letters being served, um, something coming to light, something coming to the surface, something that needs to be released, some kind of announcement, some decision of some sort. It's a level of news given Mercury changing signs. Now, the one thing about Mercury going into Scorpio that we now need to be aware of is we no longer have the mutual reception. While Mercury was in Libra, remember those two planets were working with each other. Everything that hit Venus impacted Mercury and vice versa. Everything that hit Mercury was impacting Venus. We do not have that anymore. Now that Mercury is in Scorpio, Mercury is now being hosted by Pluto and hosted by Mars. And if again you listen to the month ahead episode, there can be some foreshadowing as to what we start to deal with right around October 20th. And like I said, I'm just going to talk about it as the week of that time frame. Mercury is now in Scorpio. Something is coming through, some kind of news, some kind of decision, and it can be a part of that reactive energy that we are building to. Now, after Mercury goes into Scorpio, he's not doing anything immediately. He is building to a square to Pluto, but this is not going to be exact until the 7th. So some of the news, some of the actions, some of the reactions might trigger old wounds, fears, and insecurity, but not necessarily immediately upon the arrival of Mercury, just to be clear. All right, we're going to keep this going. We're going to keep it going. We're going to get into the midnight hours, so to speak. At 10:48 p.m. Central Standard Time, so put this at 10:30. That is when our full moon is going to perfect, but at 10:30, this is close enough. Here's the sun, 14 degrees, 7 minutes. Here is the moon, 13:57. Here is our full moon in Aries, that peak of energy, that peak of vibration. Remember, if you're a teacher, your students are probably going to be acting a little bit funny whenever it comes to Monday and Tuesday. If you know people that work in the medical field, they're probably going to have some craziness going around Monday and Tuesday, probably all weekend going into that, now that I'm really thinking about it. And of course, police force or anyone else that works with massive amounts of public, like people are going to be rather reactive and easily triggered and easily frustrated. But the majority of people, whatever it is, if it's like a trigger reaction that doesn't make sense, it's because they are projecting an insecurity. So let's be real about that. So just understand this full moon in a Mars ruled sign, given that Mars is in that secretive crevice of Scorpio, if somebody's reacting to something, they've been sitting on that for a real long time. And sometimes when they react to certain things, it doesn't always match the situation, but they're stewing on it. And that thing that we can stew on can find its way to the surface. Happy Monday, everybody. Okay, let's keep this going. The full moon again is going to perfect in the evening time. I will do a full moon episode actually on Sunday and get it out for everybody Sunday evening. That's why I'm putting the week ahead out a little bit earlier. Because I want to be closer to that full moon when I do the full moon video, just to be clear. After that, we're going to get into Tuesday. We're getting into the 7th. We are still going to be in full moon vibration all day on Tuesday. There will still be a reactive energy all day on Tuesday. And we get into the morning time, part of that arrival, that new energy of Mercury and Scorpio can be something that ends up coming to the surface. Why? Because in the morning time, that is when we get the exact square between Mercury and Pluto. I kind of referenced this on Monday already. This was building to something, but it feels like we can either somewhere between Monday or Tuesday, we can have the arrival, we can have some news come through, we can have some documentation, servicing of news, we can have something going on with our cars because it is Mercury. That is triggering, that is frustrating. It creates that reactive energy. It kind of pushes a fear to the surface, or it lets you know something, going on a more positive note, that we need to let go of, that we need to release, that we need to transform, that we need to move away from in some way. But the only way we can know what we need to move away from is by having the topic come back around. Mercury hitting the square to Pluto. It is the most exact, again, between 9:31 a.m. and 9:46 a.m. This is going to be the heavy part of Tuesday morning. And if you are kind of in a mental funk when you wake up Tuesday morning, this is why. And that mental funk can still put us in a place where we want to project or say things that we've been sitting on for a while that we haven't been able to let go of. We're still in a full moon energy while this is going on. And sometimes we're going to say exactly what we need to say, but the other person is not going to know how to handle it. They are going to be triggered. They're going to have kind of negative reactions. But given the rest of the transits as we continue through the day, do I feel like we can work through some of these negative reactions? Absolutely. Do I feel like we can also get some ideas of solutions of how to work through something? Yes. But sometimes we don't know how to work through something if we don't know what the problem is. So say it with your chest and mean what you say so we can finally get over whatever is going on. Let's work it out. Okay, let's keep going. Between 12:30 and 2:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, I'm going to get this down to 1:30. The moon in Aries is going to make a sextile. I'm not a sextile, a square to Jupiter. The moon is in the higher authority. The moon is still kind of in that vibration of the full moon. Some of the actions or reactions is going to impress something. Sometimes we need to tell the doctor something. We need to tell the nurse something. We need to tell the teacher something. Sometimes we're getting called in from a teacher, called by the medical staff. We're getting some kind of call with the idea that we want to fix something. We're trying to create a solution to something. The reason I'm specifically saying those terms is because the moon is getting really close to Chiron. It's not necessarily here. Remember, later this month, we are going to have a Chiron moon. I'm not a Chiron moon, Chiron Jupiter square. In the range of dates that I did in the month ahead, I specifically only gave like 1 degree between Chiron and Jupiter, but really their square is active all month. They're within a 2 degree range right here, as you can see. So we can see the first inklings and the first calls, so to speak, of what we need to do to fix something, to heal something, to finally get some level of pain or situation to freeze, to stall in the long run, but we're not doing it in this moment. So be aware of what's being activated in this square between the moon and Jupiter and this conjunction to Chiron. The moon square Jupiter is going to be exact again between 12:30 and 2:30. The actual conjunction between the moon and Chiron is between 4 and 6 p.m. So I got this now at 4:30, and you can see moon 25, Chiron 25. That's 10 and 19, but it's close enough. So whenever it comes to parts of the vibration, yes, there can be something to Tuesday that feels heavy. We say certain things that trigger insecurity. We can trigger fear. But the thing is, whatever got said can also be a part of finding solutions later in the day. And this is why I'm kind of in my head, I'm comparing this to schoolyard stuff. Think of our kids. There's a lot of people when I've met with them in the last week and they're talking about what's going on with their kids and they can't put it together. It's like our children get activated by this energy too. And if little Timmy gets into an argument or gets into a fight with his bully, that was a long time coming. But now that we know that there's been bullying, we can start to work on the solution. So we needed that news, that confirmation, that trigger. So again, that we could find the solution. So again, that we could find some other way to care through it, nurture through it, and address what hasn't been able to get addressed. Okay, we're going to keep it going. After the moon's conjunction to Chiron, there's not a whole lot going on. And really, the moon is going to go void. So when it comes to the rest of the day on Tuesday, are we buzzing because the moon is going through this Mars ruled sign? Absolutely. Can we still be feeling that full moon energy? Absolutely. We're only 24 hours since it's passed. So be aware, like you can still be highly elevated, highly activated, and buzzing on some stuff or stewing on some stuff or just kind of being amped up by some stuff. But we don't have any more direct transits to Tuesday evening. So we're going to go ahead and get into Wednesday. And the thing about Wednesday is as soon as we get into Wednesday, the moon is going to go into Taurus. So this is how we're going to start the day. And it's really interesting because we're just now breaking away from that full moon. The moon is now in Taurus. The moon likes to be in Taurus. It's its exaltation. It's comfortable. It's cozy. We want to be comfortable and cozy. But what I also look at is like once the moon goes into Taurus, this is in Venus' sign. And Venus is now, for a single moment, hosting the moon for a few days, while it's also Libra season. So therefore, Venus is also hosting the sun. And Venus in Virgo wants to be practical. It wants to find solutions. It wants to put something in order. It wants it to be neat and tidy and finished up in so many ways. And there was two notes that I wrote here once the moon goes into Taurus that I feel like apply for the next 2 days. And that is, sometimes the thing that we need the most isn't going to make everybody happy. But sometimes that's exactly what they need because it's practical. It's what works for everyone. It's the most fair. Sometimes the things that we want isn't what's best for our ego. That one's a little harder to swallow because there's so many people that they can't tell the difference between their spiritual side and their intuition and their ego. And if they lead only with their ego, they dismiss their intuition. They don't know how to use their intuition. They're not learning their intuition. And there's something about this little time span of the moon in Taurus of to make everybody comfortable, moon in Taurus, we have to do things that's not going to make everybody happy. But it's the most practical, it's the most fair. And if we really get down to the nitty gritty and the analytical, it's what's going to be best for everyone, even if everybody's not getting their way. And I feel like I wish people could send this to their lawmakers, given the government shutdown. That's real. Okay, moving along. Let's get back into the chart. The moon is now in Taurus. Yay. That's how we start Wednesday. Now, in the overnight hours between 1:30 and 3:30 a.m., I got this down at 2:30, Pluto is going to hit a square to the moon. You can see this right here. Now, remember, Pluto has just went through a square with Mercury. And as we continue overnight, the moon will hit this opposition to Mercury. So I want to go ahead and bump this more to the 3:30 area because this is going to encompass both. Pluto is still in the square. It's just separating, like we're right at the edge of separation, but the moon is starting its opposition to Mercury. You can see that here. This is going to be felt the most exact, this T square activation, like reactivating whatever was a part of the actual Mercury Pluto square that was Tuesday morning. This is reactivating it in the overnight hours of Tuesday going into Wednesday. So for some people, we're not getting a whole lot of sleep. Where our minds are spinning of what solutions, going back to the solution thing, that we can work through. What's going to be fair for everybody? How do we handle the decision, the arrival of news? Who needs to know about it? Who needs advice on it? What's going on? Some of us, we are going to be up late Tuesday night going into Wednesday, giving someone advice on how to work through something. Some of us are going to find out some other issue has happened and it's going to fall onto our plate. We're going to be the moon in the situation of like, okay, this happened. This is what happened to me. This is how it went down. This was the decision. This was the conversation. They did this. I said this and I meant what I said. Okay. But the moon coming back through is reactivating that square. So it's adding an extra layer, an extra level, an extra bit of insight. And again, I'm looking at the moon being hosted by Venus, but Venus is in Mercury sign while the moon is hitting this opposition to Mercury. And there is the need to, again, offer support, offer consideration, talk about people's needs, their love language, their comfort. And if I keep adding layers to what we're looking at right here, we also have the building sextile between Jupiter and Venus, which also still offers solutions. It offers care and consideration. It offers support. Jupiter in this area of Cancer, exuding what we need to heal, where we need to fix things, how we can be in touch with our feelings. And Venus is in the sextile. It's just not exact right here, but Venus is hosting that moon. What I'm looking at is Venus is in Mercury sign. Jupiter is in the moon sign during this moon Mercury opposition. So there's so many layers that speak to we're going to find something that can offer stability, that is fair, that is comfortable. We need the solution. We need to put something forward. We need to stabilize what we can stabilize. And I feel like there's a lot of conversations here about stabilizing something. Pluto's going to square the moon again between 1:30 and 3:30. The opposition to Mercury is the most exact between 3 and 5:30 a.m. So this is all night. And then as we get into our morning hours, the break of dawn, 6:31 to 6:50 a.m. This is when this is most exact. This is when Jupiter is going to have its exact sextile to Venus. Now, are we all trying to find our solutions overnight, Tuesday night going into Wednesday? No. For some people, the human effect is the solutions are going to be a part of the next morning. That's going to be the conversation that we have. That's how we're going to put some things together. That's when we're going to put that support there. It just happens to be the most exact overnight. Now, are some people going to literally be dealing with this during the exact time? Absolutely. But are other people going to be asleep during the exact times and kind of wake up the next morning feeling refreshed and also feeling like, I think I know what to do. I think I know how to help. I think I have a different perspective that we can take to someone else. Or you, if you're in the salty spot from that Mercury Pluto square, you can have somebody coming in with a fresh perspective, with some support, with some extra details to how we again overcome the situation that we didn't know was so triggering. This feels still very solution oriented. And again, not everybody is going to like the solutions that are had. That doesn't have to be a bad thing. Now, we're going to keep this going. We're going to get into the evening time of the 8th. And what we're going to talk about next is going to be reactivating something towards that full moon, but again, in that stabilizing vibration. Between 5 and 7:30 p.m., I got this at 5:30. That's going to give us a good window right here. The moon in Taurus, 10 degrees, 50 minutes, is going through an opposition to Saturn. Not Saturn, Mars. Why did I do that? Mars, 11 degrees, 18 minutes. The moon's going to hit this opposition to Mars. Now, whenever it comes to this opposition, Mars rules where that full moon just happened 2 days ago. And some of us are going to be talking to people about our hidden desires, about this burst of energy, this activation, about this new thing that we're working on, this new thing that we want to do. We're going to be talking to somebody about their actions. We're going to be hearing about somebody's desires. We're going to be professing our own desire and the action that we want to do. We're going to meet someone that could be rather disruptive, but you couldn't have met them before the full moon. You're going to have something come through in this vibration that for some of us is going to be a test. Just to let you know, they're going to be a part of a test. That's my intuition, just FYI. But it feels like there's going to be a part of a test in this energy. It's not going to feel like a test at first. It's going to feel fun. It's going to be exciting. There's going to be some kind of meeting in this energy. Mars hitting this opposition to the moon. But again, it's something that's we're happy about. We're being stable about. We're being practical about it in regards to whatever is being done. And the whole idea is like we're trying to reach some pattern of stability right here, but we're still on the high from the full moon also. And for some of us, we're just going to be hearing what other people did during the full moon. Again, those desires or the actions that we want to take or what has been discovered. It feels like it's still feeding off of a prior energy. And for some people, it's very pivotal vibration. For other people, it's going to be chaotic. It really kind of depends on how that full moon went for you. But this feels like another activation tied to the full moon. So there's that. Okay, now after the moon goes through this opposition to Mars, there ain't a whole lot going on. It's not that the moon is void. We can still have things going on, but there's no major transits left to Wednesday. We're going to keep it going. We're going to get into the 9th. We're going to get into Thursday, and still not a whole lot going on for a little while. It's cozy. It's comfortable. Again, we're trying to be practical about things. We're talking to people about sometimes what we want to let go of, what we're willing to dispose of. But I mean this in the sense of like, yeah, I'd sell that old car. You know, I've thought about it for a while. I'd totally sell that old car. I would do this. I'm thinking about selling my house and moving to the country, like that kind of stuff. Not super heavy. Now, right around lunchtime, between 12:30 p.m. and 2:30 p.m., I got it at 1:30. The moon, 23:21 minutes, is going to go through a sextile to Jupiter, 23:26. not a heavy energy, supportive energy, talking about something hopeful, something helpful. We're talking to the doctor, the guru, the teacher. We're talking about some level of plan for our future wealth and prosperity. We are giving some level of support, or we are talking to somebody that gives us support. But this doesn't even feel like I need you to tell me something. It's more along the lines of like, oh my God, this is what happened and you were totally right. Or I'm so glad I listened to you. I'm so glad I took that advice. I'm so glad that I seen you go through what you were going through, because that helped me deal with this. Like, it doesn't feel heavy by any means. Now, as we keep going, between 3 p.m. and 5:30, so I'm just going to book this 2 hours. We got it at 3:30. The moon in Venus's sign is going to go through a trine to Venus. This is Earth to Earth, productive to productive. The changes that we have made, the practical changes, Venus in Virgo, to the aesthetic is also being received well. People are enjoying it. People want it to continue to last. That moon in Taurus, that long-term fixed vibration impacting the moon. Like, are you going to come back? Are we going to do this again? Are we going to be able to repeat this? Absolutely. The moon hitting that trine to Venus and be like, I'd be willing to make this change long term. I would be willing to look at doing something for the long term. We might need to negotiate. We might need to wrap a few things up, but this is not heavy energy. Again, supportive, productive, moving something forward. Venus is in her marker where she's starting to wrap up her trip through Virgo. That's what all of this week is about. But we're not wrapping up something in this moment, but it's like becoming aware of something that if we want to do it, we do need to get prepared. And for some people, prepared does mean wrapping something up, but we're not wrapping something up in this moment. Again, supportive, extra vibration, what's fair for everybody, what's going to be the most practical, where can we put a solution into order? And again, sometimes the solutions do not satisfy our ego. There'll be a lot of people that don't like me for that statement. Don't really care. Anyways, moving along. As we continue, between 6:30 and 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, got this now at 7:30, Saturn is going to do a sextile to the moon. Not super heavy. It's really not. Saturn going through the sextile to the moon can be, again, somebody as an authority figure, talking with an elder, taking on some kind of responsibility, or talking about a past responsibility, since Saturn is retrograde and technically moving in a different direction from the moon. So we can have certain conversations about what we've done in the past. Again, a past responsibility, someplace that we used to work, talking in this regard. But it's like sometimes whenever we start talking about what we used to do in our old life, you guys hear me talk about the fact that I was in home building for so many years, that sometimes the experience of our old life, our old job, our old thing, what we used to do, is also something that set us up to be able to do things where we're at right now. Some old jobs are, the worst thing in the world, and others can be the things that set you up for success. No matter what, you learn some kind of lesson. And that can be some of the conversations that we're talking about, just some of the past stuff, old responsibilities, old places of working, old bosses, old responsibilities, but also something with the elders and talking about the past. And sometimes they can be very, very stuck in like, this, I remember whenever I was a girl, this is how your grandpa wooed me. And they make it sound so romantical, but that isn't always what it was. I have so many conversations with so many people that were like, this didn't happen in the old days. No, it happened a lot. We just didn't know it was happening because we didn't have social media, the press. We didn't have all the stuff that we have now. Like, the thing about now is we have a lot more awareness, and the good old days is not always the good old days. I just went on a tangent. I apologize. Keeping it going. Now, as we get into the late hours, I want to start with right around 11:30. When the moon is in this final Aries of Taurus, it does start a sextile to Neptune, but it doesn't go exact until we get into Friday. So I just want to be clear about this. So for some people, whenever it comes to this right around 11:30 to midnight time frame, we can start to have this energy that feels like something around confusion, something around inspiration, something about the past. Again, a little bit of that nostalgia vibe. But you might not directly be able to see that separate from Saturn, just to be clear. As we get into the 10th, we start the 10th with the moon immediately going into Gemini. And I'm really interested in the moon in Gemini this time now that Mercury is in Scorpio, because it feels very, very different. And whenever I was kind of tuning into this, it felt like we need to do some digging, but everybody's version of digging is very, very different. It's mental energy digging. So when I'm saying digging, I mean like we need to go through the paperwork, we need to go through the files, we need to put something in order, but we need to look for something. Now, not all of us are having to do paperwork right now. And I was thinking, what would be another thing that we could deep dive into that wouldn't necessarily set us off the same with the Mercury and Scorpio? One, going through old types of case files and old types of documentaries of crimes. There are certain times that whenever my mom wants just background noise, she will put it onto like a channel on the Samsung TV that is nothing but old cold case files of crimes of the past and stuff like that. Conspiracy theories. We want to go down a rabbit hole. We need to know what we don't know. But Mercury, hosting the moon in Gemini now, is in Scorpio. So we want to know what we don't know, what's going on behind the scenes, below the surface. We want to know about old crimes. We want to know about what's been hidden, what people don't want to talk about. We want to talk about all the secrets. And there's something very activating, curiously activating to the moon being in Gemini. And what I also think is interesting is that we're going to finish up the weekend with the moon in Gemini, and it's also going to be the last weekend of Venus in Virgo. So as much as we could be doing different types of deep dives of I want to know this information and this information and going down the conspiracy theory path, if that's the way you go, or something like that, the other thing people are going to be doing is they're going to be analyzing data of what they need to put into order to push something forward. And again, this is going to be kind of feeding off of that solution energy. The other thing that we can deal with once the moon goes into Gemini is any of those final things that we do need to get done that might have some level of judgment or some level of knowledge to it or some level of permission whenever it comes to parts of the weekend. We know we can be preparing to present something at the first of next week, but not all of us are in prep mode in that way. And that's why I feel like our minds are going to go down other kinds of rabbit holes if we don't have something productive to do. Okay, keep it going. The moon is in Gemini, and this again is how we start Friday. So as soon as the moon goes into Gemini, it is in that sextile to Neptune. It is exact roughly around 12:45 a.m., but we do start to feel it, like I said, just before midnight on the 9th. So I wanted to be fair about that. Now that the moon is in Gemini, it's also going to start its conjunction to Uranus. This is going to be the most this one's going to be the most intense compared to the other two aspects that are going on, because there's also going to be that trine from Pluto at the exact same time while we're going to this conjunction to Uranus. So the conjunction to Uranus is felt the most exact between 12 a.m. and 2 a.m. The trine from Pluto is going to be felt the most exact between 12:30 and 2:30 a.m. So this midnight hour altogether, it's very, very activated. It's very, very busy. And I feel like that Moon-Uranus conjunction can also be very, very telling to the rabbit hole we want to go down and what we're starting to think about. And this can be something very, very unexpected. We can also have something come through very, very unexpected, very, very unplanned. That could be very, very exciting. That puts us into, again, a trigger mode of where our mind is going to be all throughout the moon in Gemini, which is going to be Friday and Saturday for the most part. So there we go. The moon's in Gemini. We're going to keep it going. After these midnight moments, again, Neptune sextile, moon conjunction to Uranus, Pluto's trine to the moon. You can see that's actually more exact right here around this 2:30 time span. There can be things about what we need to let go of, what we need to overcome, where we need to talk about prior changes and transformations, where we need to talk about old wounds and old traumas and old triggers. But not all of us are going to do this at midnight. That's the human effect. Some people, this will still be a part of Thursday evening. For other people, this is going to be a part of the conversation of what we want to deal with when we actually get up on Friday. And you're going to deal with the human effect of like having something unexpected come through, like first thing in the morning on Friday because, again, of that Moon Uranus conjunction. Expect the unexpected. It can have to do with technology. Again, it can have to do with communication. It can have to do with something being discovered that we did not understand, kind of going into that concept of conspiracy theory type things, but it's not always conspiracy theory things. It's more along the lines of, you didn't know somebody was hiding something from you. You didn't know somebody wasn't telling you everything. And once you learn that somebody hasn't been telling you everything, then you realize you need to keep digging because you don't know what you don't know. That feels like a lot of the moon in Gemini. And the moon's going to be in Gemini all day on Friday. But after those midnight transits, not doing anything. It's just the moon in Gemini. So we're talking, we're busy buddied. We got a lot of things going on in our minds. We can be wanting to socialize a lot more and talk things out with a lot of people. But what we're talking about is stuff that they don't know about, because I'm looking at, again, the moon is in Gemini while Mercury is in Scorpio. Things that we didn't know, telling people about the stuff that they didn't hear about before, that they weren't a part of before. It doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be heavy. It does feel like we have the ability to talk a lot of things out. Now, let's get into the 11th. Let's get into Saturday. The moon's going to be in Gemini all day. When we get to the early morning hours, we're going to have two things happening simultaneously. So I want to get this roughly to around, let's see, 6:30 a.m. Oh, I'm just past that. There we go, 6:30. We got two things going on simultaneously. One, between 5 a.m. and 7:30 a.m. Central Standard Time, the moon in Gemini, you can see that right here, is going through a trine with the sun. 18 degrees, 33 minutes, 18 degrees, 24. So there can be something about mental understanding, a practical order, but there can also be something about, again, a judgment. Now, I said there's two things going on, and the second thing really speaks more to the judgment. The sun is in Venus's sign. In this early morning hour, most exact between 5:56 and 6:14 a.m., that's why I put it at 6:30, by the way, is Venus is going to go through her opposition to Saturn. Now, Venus gives results right now. That's every time I meditate on her, she feels like she's giving us results. She's giving us an outcome. She's giving a solution. We are coming to the boss, the authority figure, the elder, with a solution. Sometimes we're going to be waking up early Saturday morning with the elder saying, I'm feeling a certain way, something's going on, and they just need support. They need some kind of blessing. They need some extra help. That's that Venus part. With the sun going through the trine from the moon, while the sun is in Venus's sign, this kind of speaks layers to the energy of, like, we need a certain amount of communicative understanding, moon trine sun, with our elders, with who's responsible, with the care that needs to be taken, with the direction of how something needs to be taken. And there can also be a conversation, given that Venus is in her final 2 days of being in Virgo, of telling the boss or an authority figure, I know this is Saturday morning, so the human effect is some people might be doing that on Friday, but we're going to stick with this timeline of whenever it's the most exact. Venus in that opposition to Saturn can be saying, I need to overcome something, finish something, wrap something up, put something into order so I can go focus on something else, work on something else, do something else, or so I can continue doing something, but in a better way. Like I've got an idea of how to make the space more usable, the place more usable. I just need to be able to finish working through this stuff, put some shelves on the wall, whatever we need to do to put something into order. Again, this doesn't have to feel heavy. Now, will it be heavy for some people? Absolutely. This could also be a very harsh energy for a kid to get, caught sneaking back into the house because they were out all night and they were trying to do something, again, kind of in that sneaky mode, but they got caught by grandpa, by their parents, by the authority figure. That's a big possibility too. There can be judgment in the Venus Neptune, not Venus Neptune, Venus Saturn opposition. There can be judgment, but it doesn't necessarily feel like the most harshest of judgments. And that's why I'm not quick to just go with that. But there can be judgments. And I feel like the judgments of what we get, or if certain people are feeling judgment, I feel like it's still childlike for a lot of people this week. Like we get a childlike reaction of like, I didn't know it was wrong. I didn't know what I didn't know. But how we work with that is all a matter of chance, and it's all a matter of personal choice, how we work through our situation. So we're going to keep it going. Some of us are going to be catching somebody doing something sneaky in the morning. Some of us are going to be making some absolute plans, and we're going to wrap something up this weekend, get something put into order because we want it to be more useful and practical for everybody. Venus in that opposition to Saturn. Okay, we're going to keep it going. Between 4:30 and 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, the moon is going to go through a sextile from Chiron. So you got Chiron here, 25 degrees, 8 minutes. Here's the moon, 24:34. This is more exact right after that 5 p.m. energy, but you can see it right here. Chiron, again, this is going to be about the wounds, old things from the past, but solutions. We're trying to find a lot of solutions. That's what I keep getting. We're trying to put something in order. What makes it easier for everybody? Where can we get something really going? Where can we focus on something? This does not feel heavy at all with Chiron's energy. It's just talking about like how we fix something in the past and what we can do with it now, how we can apply to something now. Again, not heavy energy. There can be heavier energy in the evening time whenever we reactivate whatever was active in the morning. So I want to keep this going. Remember in the morning, we had the full Venus-Saturn opposition. But once we get to roughly about, I'm going to put it at 9:30 because this is going to encompass both. Between 7:30 and 9:30 p.m., Saturn, right here, 2657, is going to square the moon. But between 9 and 11 p.m., the moon is going to square Venus. So I do still feel like this activates whatever we set the intention of in the morning time, whatever we were talking about in the morning time, whatever we were pushing forward in the morning time. And I want to go with the more solution oriented thing for the first part of this example. And that is, I want to wrap something up because once the aesthetic is fixed, once we have the space, put up the shelves, do the extra thing, we'll have more countertop space. We can reorganize the pantry. We can do something like this. And if you spend the entire day reorganizing the kitchen, the moon hitting the square can be like bringing the other person into the kitchen, because if you're reorganizing it, you don't always want to do it with another person. If you're anything like me, like, no, everybody out of my space. Get out, get out, get out, get out. Leave me alone so I can do this. Because if you distract me or if something else pops up, I'm going to get mad and I don't want to get mad. So it's like at the end of the day, you bring the extra person in going, okay, so I want to show you where a couple of things are because these are important things for you. I want you to know where I put your favorite coffee cup, where I put your snack cakes, where I put whatever in that. I'm thinking of the most practical reorganizing of the kitchen situation. Like, this is here, this is here, this is here. I know these things are important for you. So I want you to know where your stuff is. This is what I have done. And it's like, again, bringing somebody into the mix of what we have just done. Now, for other people, can go into that negative judgment thing again, and it brings somebody else into the judgment situation. Okay, you catch your kid sneaking in the house. By the afternoon, you're talking to your mom, and your mom's reminding you, hey, you snuck out too. You did it too. You talked to your husband. We did dumb shit too. We've got to remember that. Like, we were young and dumb also. And sometimes we're just bringing somebody else into the mix of whatever the conversation was, wherever we had prior judgment. And we're asking, was I the asshole? Did I do too much? Was I too harsh? And sometimes the extra feedback or input from another person allows for us to be able to say yes or no, and puts a different perspective there. It gives additional layers to whatever was the most exact in the morning time when Venus and Saturn were in their actual opposition. Okay, the evening time is extra layers to the morning time, just really summing that up. And we're going to keep this going. There's not a whole lot else going on to the 11th. We're going to get into Sunday. And whenever we get into Sunday at 1:37 a.m. Central Standard Time, the moon is going to go into Cancer. And now, as soon as the moon goes into Cancer, it's in a square from Neptune. And this is going to be a little bit hazier, unclear. Some people are going to have some kind of like confusion in the vibration of not knowing what to do, how something happened, and it can trigger an emotion. Some of us might figure out somebody has lied to us with this Neptune energy, and that can trigger an emotion. Now, this is happening in the overnight hours. We can also discover that somebody has been hiding something. Now, I'm thinking hiding in more of like the usage sense. So, like, think of drinks, think of I'm going to say smoke, but other things that we don't necessarily want to talk about, other vices of certain sorts. Gambling can also be a vice, by the way, of things that we don't always want other people to do. And it's like that vice creates an impact given the Neptune vibration. For other people, it's going to be the confusing energy. And as soon as the moon goes into Cancer, there is something that triggers an emotion. It's the most because of that Neptune square. There's something about a new energy coming through that we want to be able to take care of, that we want to be able to process, that we want to be able to handle. For some people, that emotion is going to have to do with like the feedback of how this week is gone. And again, all the extra cares and considerations that we need to do. And there can be inspiration once the moon goes into Cancer. For other people, it is going to be trying to understand or emotionally react to whatever news, sneaky situation, whatever the moon and Gemini did with the sneakiness aspect of it. Now we need to emotionally process whatever that sneaky, underhanded behavior was, if it was the negative sense. For other people, it's just the extra layers of consideration of all the order that we've put into place this week. We're all in different places. All right, let's get back into it. The moon is now in Cancer, and again, in this square to Neptune. The other thing about this Neptune moon square is given it's happening in these overnight hours between 1 and 3 a.m., some of us are going to get the midnight phone call. Some of us are just going to have the downloads. And it makes us aware of something else that we want to start, that we want to nurture, that we want to push forward. It can be something from the past finding its way back up to the surface. And it's like allowing us to finally process an emotion. That's a big thing that can happen here too. This is happening again in those overnight hours. Some people, it's just going to be the downloads, and you're going to wake up the next morning aware of certain things. Some people are going to want to be drowning in their senses, so they're going to have a few extra drinks Saturday night going into Sunday, and then you wake up the next morning a little hungover, and that is your fault. Deal with your stuff. Drink a Gatorade, you'll be fine. When we get into the afternoon, we have this energy that goes the most exact between 4 and 6 p.m. And that is the moon in Cancer hitting this trine to Mercury. And when I look at the moon hitting this trine to Mercury, I'm also paying attention to the fact that, again, it is Venus's last full day in Virgo. And this level of emotional understanding can also bring a certain awareness for certain people that something needs to be done. Something is wrapping up. Some people will be having a conversation with somebody of letting them know, I'm going to be leaving soon, or I'm going to go in a different direction, or I'm about to start something. There's going to be something new going into next week. And this communication right here can literally be like, I'm preparing, instead of wrapping something, I'm preparing to go start something next week. I start my new job on Monday. I start this new thing next week. I'm going to go in this different direction, and it's going to be happening soon. So it feels like foreshadowing for a lot of people. It can also be about that, discovery of what people have uncovered the last few days, given again, while the moon was in Gemini, Mercury has been in Scorpio the entire time. The data, the information of what has been brought to the surface. And then there can be some people that once they learn it, they have an emotional response. Now that can have a multitude of different ways. And again, if we go with the idea of like some level of conspiracy theory kinds of things, sometimes you can just hear about some person out there that you've never heard of before. I'm trying to think. Whenever I look at certain things, I'm going with the conspiracy theory thing here for just a second. When I look at certain things in regards to like ancient history, there's always a correspondence that you can see. Had that not happened in it, it would have completely changed the trajectory of where we're at in life. And there are some people that their minds will just kind of get stuck on that for a while, and they need to talk it out. They need to think it out. I have a couple that I can think of. But then there's going to be other people that they go down that rabbit hole of, you know, killers or something like this, and they want to talk to somebody about, like, oh yeah, I went down the whole rabbit hole of Jeffrey Dahmer this weekend, because that's an easy one and most people know that name. And it's just so crazy to me. But it's like whenever you bring up one story of something that you see, you trigger an emotion in another person. That's a big possibility. As we get into the week, there can be just some emotional triggers. And in some ways, it's not even us trying to trigger something. It's just like that's what needs to purge. That's what needs to release. That's what we need to get out there. For other people, once Mercury goes into Scorpio, our minds hone in on what's been going on below the scenes, below the surface. And as we get into the latter part of the week, that focus is going to become pronounced. It is going to be talked about. It is going to come up to the surface in certain ways. And that alone will have its own need to process in regards to our emotions, what we need to nurture, what we need to overcome. And the best way I could ever look at Mercury in Scorpio is it's very investigative, but it's not openly investigating and it's not openly talking about everything. It's deep diving. And some of us are going to be deep diving into things, or some of us are going to be finally talking about what we've been working on for a very long time, what our plans are, what's been going on behind the scenes and below the surface. And again, some part of us are going to feel like the full moon is an activation. That activation is going to have us react in certain ways, but some of the reactions are going to be different for everybody. Some it will be a volatile reaction because you don't have control of your emotions. That's a different conversation. For other people, it's going to be like, it's finally time to do something. And it really pushes forth our drive and our ambition for what else is going to come in the month of October. Once we get through that full moon, a lot of our drive and our desires and how the rest of the week goes is very correlated to what's being activated in that full moon. Now, for some people, it is going to bring a new vibration and a new energy, new people. That's not a bad thing. I think we can see the first glimmers, and one or two new people going into this week based off of everything that we're doing. But I want to be real. Some of this initial energy can also be a part of a test. Now, we won't initially see it as a test. And sometimes that person that comes through, they're there to help us get through the test if they're not the test themselves. So be aware of that part. But there's something in this vibration that speaks to things that we are seeing, things that are going on below the surface. We're not going to figure them all out at once. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but at the same time, sometimes you don't realize how important something or someone is going to be until after the fact. And I'm letting you know that for a lot of people, some of the players that arrive this week, and for even more next week, they are going to be somebody that's either very pivotal in a future testing vibration that will be a part of the next few months, or they are the tests themselves. They're either somebody that can help you get through it, they are a part of the situation. It kind of confirms it and brings people more into that vibration together, or they themselves are the test. And even if you don't know that person, sometimes tests are, this person has a similar energy, similar mannerisms, similar situations that goes back to the past, but they're not the past person. And it's letting us know if we can recognize pattern recognition in people versus just repeating the same pattern with the same person. So be aware that the first inklings of where a test is going to be also feels like it comes through this week. That could be a good thing. That could be a bad thing. But no matter what, we have an activation in this full moon. And I have a lot of hope. I'm feeling really good in this vibration. I'm really enjoying Mars and Scorpio. I knew that I would. And now that we're in October, we're in spooky season. We want to do some new things. And sometimes whenever you go down a rabbit hole of conspiracy theories or murder mysteries or anything like that. That's just matching the vibe. So there's that. Okay. I love and appreciate every single one of you. I will talk to everybody very, very soon. Subscribe.